You can't be quiet. You gotta breathe.
My daughter suffers from the same thing. I just texted mom, so.
Oh, no. Having a little difficulty last night with the.
Okay. I'm gonna call the meeting to order here. Call to order. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And roll call.
Commissioner Phillips?
Here.
Commissioner Putnam?
Here.
Commissioner Say?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Vice Chair Glass?
Here.
And Chair Hewert.
Here.
We have a quorum. Not in attendance, we have Commissioner Kennedy, just for the record.
Okay, we'll go to the consent calendar. How about the minutes first? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
And a second?
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none? How about a vote?
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam?
Yes.
Commissioner Say?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Vice Chair Glass?
Yes.
Chair Hewert?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now the second part of the consent calendar, resolution. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 2120?
I'll motion to approve.
second.
And second, any discussion? Seeing none? We'll
Who,
call for a
who
vote.
seconded? Oh,
Kathy
Smith.
Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam?
Yes.
Commissioner Say?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Vice Chair Glass?
Yes.
Chair Hewert?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. General business. Item number 1, staff, please make your presentation.
Yeah. So item number 1 is a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit and coastal development permit to convert an I'm sorry. Hold on. Before we begin.
Oh, yeah, we have, is this, the one on Crescent Street, we might have 2 people.
Yeah, I think it's item 2.
No, that's on the second one. I was just double checking.
Okay, good.
Sorry about that. Item number 1 is a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit and coastal development permit to convert an existing apartment, the Riviera apartment, on the second floor above the Pancake Cottage restaurant into a residential apartment located at 613 Crescent Avenue in Avalon. The project is in the coastal zone and is subject to a coastal development permit. The owner and applicant is the Santa Catalina Island Company. And I do have Carl Schmeck, who is a representative of the Island Companies, the vice president of Design and Development, on the line, and he's available for questions following my presentation. The property is located within the commercial zone. As previously mentioned, the Island Company is proposing to convert an existing apartment on the second floor above the Pancake Cottage restaurant into a residential apartment. Historically, the space has been used in previous iterations as a residential unit. The proposed use is allowed in the commercial zone as a conditionally permitted use under Avalon Municipal Code 9-6.203A11 and conforms and carries out the certified land use plan for the area. The city's fire chief and building official have reviewed the space with the Island Company and have found it habitable with minor interior modifications needed. Their findings indicated that there is sufficient primary access to the unit via the stairway from Crescent Avenue, adjacent from the Pancake Cottage, and secondary egress via the rear door rooftop access. That's the one that goes out to the alleyway. The residential unit consists of 4 bedrooms and has an existing fire sprinklers and fire extinguisher. The proposed reconfiguration will keep the one dwelling unit with either a 3 or 4 bedroom configuration. All bedrooms will have 1 or more street front windows. As proposed, the minor renovations will be administratively approved. While the previous use was similar to the currently proposed use, The property never had a conditional use permit, as I understand it. The property had existed prior to the need for conditional use permits. However, because there's been an extended period of non-use, our municipal code basically states if the use hasn't been utilized or too much time has lapsed since that use had been utilized as proposed, that we would need to bring that back and have them apply for a conditional use permit on that. The commission shall consider applications for a CUP and can, with such conditions as are deemed necessary, approve the conditional use, provided it does not jeopardize, adversely affect, endanger, or otherwise constitute a menace to the public health, safety, or general welfare, or be materially detrimental to the property or other persons located in the vicinity of use. As proposed, the existing use complies with all of those as further indicated in the staff report. The proposed use is also categorically exempt under CEQA section 15301D and E2A and B. This is in regarding to existing facilities. The project, as mentioned, does require a coastal development permit under section 9-8.102B 2V of the municipal code, as it's within 300 feet of the appealable zone, and the proposed change in use conforms to the certified local coastal plan and complies with all requirements as well. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission make 4 different findings. The first one is that the commission find the project categorically exempt under CEQA section 15301D and E2AB for existing facilities, that they adopt the findings to support a coastal development permit pursuant to AMC section 9-8.103, that they adopt the findings to support the approval of a conditional use permit, and that they approve the project as proposed with the standard list of conditions that was attached to the staff report as listed as Exhibit A. So with that, that concludes my report, and I'm available for any questions, and I know I've got Carl Schmeck, who is available as well.
I have a
Thank you.
question.
Questions for staff?
So I've always known this building, or the top floor was always housing. I remember that. I don't remember, has it been just sitting vacant, or was there like an office, or?
I think it got converted into office at one point.
CIPR
Because
put it
Oh.
temporarily while they were
So-
remodeling.
That building originally were offices upstairs, that's why that's kind of a funky layout.
I've always known it as like
Was
an
that Shirley
apartment.
Davies' old place?
Yeah.
Shirley lived
That's what I
there for
thought.
so long.
So then it has, since that passed, then it went to an office use?
Yeah,
Was the use changed from the apartment from a living status to a different? Is there a change? Is that why we're going back to another?
I'm actually going to let Carl here kind of talk a little bit more about the history, since he is with the Island Company. And
But I'm asking you about the change in the use of the permit.
Why does it
That's
need
all.
a conditional use permit?
Yeah, because I'm just trying to figure out.
yeah, so why they're going back for it is they never had an existing conditional use permit when it was utilized, and because it has not been utilized as a residence for quite some time. Our municipal code states that any period of 1 year or more of non-use as the intended or stated use, they have to go back and reapply for a conditional use permit. So regardless of whether it was an office space or if it was existing as a residential, if that unit had not been utilized as a residential unit, let's say the last time it was used as a residential unit was 7 years ago, and that has been basically sitting vacant, they would have to go back and reapply for a conditional use permit in order to be conditioned to utilize it within the zone.
So I guess my question here is, I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, I'm happy that it's going to be an apartment, because housing, we definitely need that. I just don't want it to, like, since it was housing, then it went to office, and now it's going back to housing. They're not going to have to go to the water. I mean,
well, but look, we've got this layout, it was always a 2-bedroom. Because it started out as 4 offices when it was for the Crescent Villas. Then Shirley lived there, it was Beta.
so are
They
they?
do have a current water allocation for 4 bedrooms
We do. We do.
as listed from Edison.
Even though there were
Okay.
only ever 2 bedrooms up there.
I just want you to clarify that, so I'm not, because I mean, that's where everything, the water
Absolutely.
situation, and I absolutely think we need housing, so.
Any other questions for staff?
Can you explain, I thought we did away with CUPs, so don't understand.
So a conditional use permit, what you're thinking of is when we want to utilize that for transient use. Anytime you want to rent out your apartment for 30 days or less, that would stipulate previously the need for a conditional use permit. We changed that from a conditional use permit to a transient rental license.
Right.
However, anytime, so the way zoning codes work is there's principal uses. So in the commercial zone, a principal use that would be an acceptable use of that land would be things like medical offices, retail establishments, a couple other different types of businesses. And then there's conditional uses, so uses that are permitted as approved under a conditional use permit that have to go to the planning commission in order to be approved, and it also allows the commission to attach any additional conditions for that use.
So making it a residence again means we have to do the,
So residential use is permitted, but it's permitted under a conditional use, so they have to go back to the planning commission to seek out a conditional use permit because it's not a principal use in the commercial zone.
thank you.
Any other questions for staff before we? Okay, we're going to open the public hearing, and that'd be a good time to ask the applicant or the applicant to speak. So open the public hearing. Any comments? I think you may be the only person here. So do you have anything you wish to say?
Sure. Mike, can you hear me okay?
I
Commission?
can.
Perfect. I think the only comment I would have is I'm not aware of it being used as an office. I know most recently it was used for residential, and I think we share your enthusiasm for trying to get more residential into Avalon. So I'm pleased to hear this is well received, and I'm certainly available to answer any other questions you may have.
It's pretty straightforward.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing nobody.
I have no comments here.
I'm sorry? Any?
I don't have any comments.
No comments? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Do we have a motion
I'll make a motion to approve
with the four
with the
conditions?
4 conditions.
included?
I'd second it.
So it's moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call for a vote, please.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Putnam,
Yes,
Commissioner Say,
Yes,
Commissioner Smith,
Yes,
Vice Chair Glass,
Yes?
Chair Hewart.
Yes,
Motion passes.
motion carried. Thank you.
So item number 2, we do have 2 commissioners that will have to abstain due to proximity to the location. That'll be Commissioners Putnam and Commissioner Smith.
good.
Mike, it's Isaac. I just want to make sure we have on the record the reason for the abstention.
I said proximity to the location, the address,
Got it. That's for both commissioners.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Item number 2, staff report, please.
Yeah, sorry, find the right report. Item number 2 is a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit and coastal development permit to convert one of the existing second floor spa suites into a residential apartment located within the Island Spa, located at 163 Crescent Street in Avalon. The project is in the coastal zone and subject to the coastal development permit. The owner and applicant for this is also the Santa Catalina Island Company. Carl Schmeck, the Vice President of Design and Development for the Island Company, is also online and can answer questions following staff report. The property is located also within the commercial zone. As previously mentioned, the Island Company is proposing to convert one of the 2 existing second floor spa suites into a residential unit for workforce housing, primarily for the spa's manager. Prior to 2014, the space was historically utilized as a residence and then was converted as an executive treatment spa, one of 2 in there. The other executive treatment room will continue to remain as a part of the spa and not as residence. The Proposed use is allowed in the commercial zone as a conditionally permitted use under Avalon Municipal Code 9-6.203A11, and it conforms and carries out the certified LUP for the area. The city's fire chief and building official have reviewed the space and found it habitable with minor modifications needed. Their findings indicate that there's sufficient primary access to the suite via the exterior stairs in the courtyard, and that the unit complies with and it has existing fire sprinklers and fire extinguisher, as well as the fact that it has secondary egress. Minor renovations will be required, including the installation of refrigeration, basic food preparation equipment. However, renovations as proposed may be administratively approved and would not require a site plan. While the previous use was similar to the currently proposed use, that existing CUP has since expired as the use had ceased for a consecutive period of 1 or more years. So per the municipal code 9-8.404, the commission can consider the application for a conditional use permit and may, with such conditions as are deemed necessary, approve a conditional use provided that it does not jeopardize, adversely affect, endanger, or otherwise constitute a menace to public health, safety, or general welfare, or be materially detrimental to the property or other persons located in the vicinity of such use. The justifications are also listed in the staff report in greater detail. The proposed use is categorically exempt under CEQA Section 15301D and E2AB regarding existing facilities. The project, as mentioned, does require a coastal development permit under 9-8.102B2V of the municipal code, as it's within the 300-foot appealable zone, and the proposed change in use conforms to the certified local coastal plan and complies with all requirements. So as such, staff is recommending the commission make 4 findings. The first one is find the project categorically exempt under CEQA Section 15301D and E2AB. Adopt the findings to support a coastal development permit pursuant to AMC Section 9-8.103. Adopt the findings to support approval of the conditional use permit, and approve the project as proposed with the standard list of conditions that are attached in your staff report under Exhibit A. So with that, that concludes my report. I'm available for any questions, and as indicated, I also have Carl Schmeck on the line in case any questions are directed directly towards the applicant.
Okay, any questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
So we're going from one use to another use now.
That's correct. Right now, it's under the commercial use because it's part of the existing spa. They're taking that one of the 2 existing suites and they're reconverting that back into a residence. Previously, that was a residence, and when the spa was built out and they did some renovations, they had converted that existing use to an executive treatment space.
So since the spa had water allocation.
That's correct, and it still does.
So now it's changing uses, and then there's still water allocation.
That's correct.
So, I think this is important.
Great, yeah. It's one less housing unit
Yes.
they're taking out of the city. They're actually putting their people in it, so that's great.
Any other questions for staff? Open the public hearing. Any comments from the audience? Well, we have one. And from the applicant?
I would just add regarding the water that this treatment facility already has a shower and toilet and sink. So
I just like to make it clear because a lot of people out there probably don't have the clarification, and water is very scarce, and so I just wanted to make it known on record that there is already a water allocation. Water is on the, and it's just changing the use of the business now.
absolutely, yeah, good clarification. No, so I think that's all I have unless there are questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any comments?
I have no comments.
Anybody in the audience wanting to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. And a motion. Anybody propose a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve
To approve
staff recommendations
1 through 4?
1 through 4.
Okay.
I'll second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none,
It's a good thing.
call for a vote.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Say,
Yes.
Vice Chair Glass,
Yes.
Chair Hewart.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. And the next item may be the presentation on the mole project, I understand. Here we go.
So while we're getting this up so that everybody can view the screen, I'll go ahead and start setting it up and also talk a little bit about why we're bringing this item up. This is a more comprehensive project overview of the Cabrillo Mole Phase 2 project. As you recall, last month we brought this from a environmental standpoint to approve the mitigated neg deck, and we wanted to make sure that the commissioners had a better understanding of the project and also had the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the priorities from the Planning Commission side of things in terms of what they would like to see before we move this closer to RFP. This is a different presentation than we had originally started with in the last month's presentation, and I also have Carl Schmeck with the Island Company who's available to help co-present, as well as Bob Greenlaw, Public Works Director, who's really the head of this project and helping to see this project basically go from conceptualization to implementation. So with that, that's kind of the initial setup. This presentation is really an evolution of, as I just mentioned, an evolution of what we had presented last month. When we had shopped that around and had some discussions with our community stakeholders, the Island Company, as one of the major stakeholders, really they took what we had conceptually and they really fleshed it out into a more comprehensive design. Looking at this from a completely different perspective, rather than looking at this from an engineering perspective, they looked at this more from an architectural perspective, and it's really advantageous for us to do that. Carl Schmeck with the Island Company is a certified architect and has a really good grasp of how to root a sense of place in the environment. So really creating this in a completely different way, in a much more fundamental way that connects our visitors and our residents and the sense of what that ferry terminal is, and root that into the community to help realize kind of what we're trying to achieve here, which is, this ferry terminal is our opportunity to reimagine the existing facilities out there, to look at this from a multimodal perspective and to really connect people in ways that they haven't been before. And that ferry terminal is really important because it's the first place that people see. It's also the last point of contact as people leave our island. And so we want to make sure that it's welcoming either way, so that when they're coming in, there's a sense of, I've entered into a place of paradise, I've entered into a place of destination, and when they're leaving, they also have the sense of, gosh, I really want to go back. I had such fond memories of that, and we were leaving a really lasting impression. As mentioned before, and this is the same slide that we had shown the commission early on, this is the scope of work that of the project that we're really looking at. So when you look at this blue outlined area, this is the project confinements. This is what we were talking about when we went through the mitigated neg deck and the CEQA findings. While there's opportunity to go out to 4 and 5, especially with the shade structures, the scope of the project, both within the environmental aspects of it as well as the permitting aspects of it, really confine us to this space. We can't go into the water. We can't do things that kind of go outside that scope, because one, that would fundamentally change the project, but also it would require a change in the permits. One of the things that Carl and his team were looking at was really the opportunity within the ferry terminal, and what they wanted to look at was, the ferry terminal is really unique in the community of Avalon. So if you're standing on that terminal and you're looking one way, you've got a view shed that's approximately 45 degrees. And if you look the other way towards the casino, you have a view shed of approximately 90 degrees. This gives you some really unique opportunities to locate buildings and structures, to create a sense of place and really take advantage of people being able to see the beauty of our island from two completely different perspectives on there. So this was kind of helping to situate that and to look at that. And this view shed and this is actually going to influence how that building can be reimagined and how we can create a sense of place for that. When looking at design inspirations, there's a lot of architectural nuances that we have here that make Catalina unique, but also kind of follow the same kind of architectural stylings of Southern California. Carl can speak to this much more eloquently than I can, but we have that California Spanish Moorish design. You go to Santa Barbara, you go to Catalina, you go to other places in Southern California, and you see this a very distinct architecture that you don't see in a lot of other places in California or even across the U.S. There's also, this is kind of the same stylings, but located in other parts of California, and you can see a lot of the similarities. So they were looking at this in terms of actual design. I'm going to pass this over to Bob, who's really going to talk about some of the fundamental changes to the design from when we originally proposed this on how the building is located and how this is going to influence what this ferry terminal could be reimagined as.
Good evening. Hey, it's great to be back from the last time, and so we want to share some more with you. So what am I going to relate is a vision for a master plan, because I know that was asked. Do we really have a master plan for this as we go out from phases 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and could be 10 over a period of 20 years, let's say, so that we could keep on building the facility that we really do want and is to accommodate all our visitors and residents for a period of 20 years and beyond. So really what this is starting is with that backbone, that framework, and depending on the cost and amount of funding we have available, we'll implement those phases. As Mike expressed, this master plan actually goes out into floats 4 and 5 and shows what could happen as far as the queuing in those areas. So this is the framework to help build that vision. And what Carl has come up with his team there is that the current site doesn't have really a fundamental focal point. If there's just a set of buildings out there. And they've come up with the concept of a central hub out there, something that has some vertical elevation to it that you can see no matter what direction. If you're walking from town, as you arrive on foot, you walk down from town like we all do, you would have this central focal point, a hub. Or if you came from the water, you would have that central focal point that had some vertical elevation to it. Or if you were driving by, you'd know that you're at this sense of place, and everything would come into that hub. And what are the things that we need to come off of that hub? You can see that we have, some outdoor waiting. And of course, that's in the water, and we're talking in that elbow zone of that inside area where the floats aren't right there. You could have some, seating or, tiering that would go down in there. And of course, that's not this project, but it could be for future. And then you have arrows that go out from that hub, and that's your queuing. And the queuing, is going to be covered queuing so that you're protected from the elements, you're shaded, because we realize that that's not functionally happening now out there, or if it is out there, we're not using it to the best. And so when we designed this thing in the final design, we want to make sure that that works well. When you queue up, that you're in the ability to be in the shade, you're out of the weather, no matter what it is. And for anybody with any way that they are, even if they're disabled, we can get them to the floats in the easiest manner in a very comfortable way. You can see that we actually had moved the restrooms back away because it seems like, why would that be? It seems like when people get off of the boat, that's the first thing they do is they rush to the restroom, and it causes this chaotic scene right there. and we're trying to reload the boats, okay? So seems like this is a better location, but you know, it's a first stab at it. And then, of course, you have the baggage at the back end of the house there, you know, because that's where we load up and then we're loading to transport it. And, you know, that's a key element of getting the baggage and getting people to be able, because I don't think that when our visitors come to the island, they realize enough that they can leave their baggage and somebody else can take care of it like it used to be, you know, and that can be moved. So if we can get more people to do that, then they free themselves from that. They freed themselves from their cars, they freed themselves from the baggage, and now we can go enjoy the town, you know? So those are essential services. And of course, the ticketing and then all those amenities.
And just before we move to the next slide, the central hub also acts as a gateway or a transition zone. So as people are going through that central hub, they're transitioning from either the ferry terminal into the city or from the city back into the ferry terminal. And so it allows for this, you know, nice sense of place and prepares you for the next part of your destination. And you'll see this kind of manifest itself in some of the renderings when we talk about this being kind of a gateway and a transition zone.
And Carl, anytime you want to weigh in too, go ahead, okay? This should be, you know.
Sure, I'd be happy to whenever it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have anything to say about that last slide we were on?
Well, you know, I'd echo what you and Mike have presented so far. You know, that this is, you know, a critical facility because it does provide the first and last impression for guests, visitors, but also it should be a graceful facility and something we're really proud of. And you know, you emphasize the site and where this sits. And on one hand, we have the iconic casino, and then you know, this is really the other bookend to create that gateway to Catalina and really create kind of an iconic moment there. So I think that emphasizes the importance of the work we're doing here and of the investment that we're making. And so what I think we're looking at today is a concept. You know, it's a framework, and what you've articulated so far about, you know, creating that focal point, creating a really great arrival space that's gracious, that's welcoming, but really helps to organize the site. But still, you know, it's creating that master plan. It's a long-term vision, right? That's something that's flexible, that you know, organizes circulation, that kind of achieves the functional goals that we need it to, but it's still flexible, and it can be built on and expanded on over time. So what you're getting here is a really gracious hall with these kind of arms that almost embrace the harbor, and then also act to organize the queuing lines while meeting the you know, all the kind of functional goals we know need to be met with this facility. When we talk to our stakeholders and the meetings that you and Mike have led, you know, we talk about the need for shade and protection from the wind and rain in the rainy months. We talk about the need for adequate facilities, for organizing the transit side of it, for getting organized pickup and drop off, and really cleaning that all up. And so I think what you're seeing and what you've explained really well so far is a concept. You know, it's a sketch, right? It's a concept that attempts to kind of accomplish all that and give us that framework.
Excellent. Okay, so this slide here, we look at the circulation, okay? And we've got a legend down in the left-hand side there, you can see, and I can explain that. You can see in the blue lines there, those are the passenger queues. And in the pinkish pedestrian access as we're coming from town, and then we move through that central hub, and then we go into the other areas like the restroom, or we're moving to get to float 1, 2, and 3, or we're going to those other amenities that are there. So there's that access. And then, of course, we have the green ones where we're getting into the gates, and those are essential access points. And then we have the vehicular circulation, which is, you know, very important to work on, and we're going to have a lot of work to do on that to make sure that it's better than it is now, more functional than it is now, but it also serves the future of whatever we can vision that our transportation system is going to be here to be able to move passengers or by whatever modes that we have, because this is supposed to be truly a multimodal. It is the hub where everything comes in and leaves, and if we can do that in a seamless manner, in a very enjoyable manner, in a sense of place, then we really have done our job. And then you see where the entry points are in the gold in there. Those are the entry points into that central hub. The next slide kind of zeroes in on that, and it does a proposed site plan, and you can start seeing the naming of the individual things as we talk about them, float 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, up in the left corner there, you can see that the Harbor Walk from town, the pedestrian esplanade that comes down that we would, as we walk into that central hub, the vehicular court, parking and transportation, and then the passenger and ferry services, and then of course the wharf. And then an important part of this is, as we move through this, is the wharf is, complete as it could be for highest and best use? Or is there other uses during 24 hours a day, 365 days a year that we can use that for? And it can change. It's dynamic, and right now it's being used basically for fishing. And, but is there something that we can make some activities happen on that too? That's a lot of very expensive square footage out there that we probably could repurpose some of that at certain times. And of course, that's not during about those 15 days of the year where we're getting high storm events. But so in doing that, you would think that we also have to have storage if we do bring out something out there. Okay, so as far as the site plan, you can see that the team has designed, kind of a kiss and go, as I call them. That's your drop-off circle there. And so they have that, whether that works at the configuration, but at least that's what it's showing you, something like that. It has the central median there where you got ingress and egress out there. And then of course it shows kind of a drop-off zone in front of where those restrooms were. And then also we're back to the seaplane ramp, where right now, it's just that's our short-term parking, so that we also can use that to bring people in as they're waiting. Kind of your cell phone lot, if you're at an airport, get there, park there, so we're not cluttering up the place. There's lots of opportunity to work on this transportation node right here as we move through the project with the design team to make sure that it works really well. And it's one of the things we need to really focus on.
And then last, real quick, just when you're looking at this too, this detail on the slide also kind of shows from an aerial view what that roofing plan would potentially look like. So you see the queuing areas for those passengers is 100% covered. It means nobody's standing out in the sun. They're able to get adequate protection, but it also cohesively goes back into the rest of the facility there too.
Yeah, and you can see where the walkway comes into, and you're starting to get that vertical look of that central hub as we're coming from town. And you can see how all that ties together. It's not just buildings here, it's all coming into that central point. Next slide lays out the main deck building program. And again, you got the legend over there, and it kind of lays out some proposed square footage. So you have the kind of salmon color, the public concourse area, and then you get vertical with the towers and gates where you get a little more pinker color there. And then we've got the queues that are shaded kind of in that lavender color. And then passenger services in the back of the building there. Public bathrooms where we had noted those before in that bluish color. And then potentially you got the upper deck, which I think is the next sheet. Okay, and we can move to that. And on this one, you can see where, as we get to the golden color there, we got the restaurant and bar, and then we've got the back of the house and the culinary there in the gray area. But still, the central hub, you can see where it's very vertical, okay? And you have stairways within that. And then there's also in the back of the gray area, that's your elevator. So we have an elevator here, and we have additional stairways, and we have the stairway down to the lower deck there in the red colors. So, and then you're getting that kind of that tile look on the whole extent of the frontage there as we're coming in. So if you're coming from the water, you get that big look, that grand, like Carl says, that, arms wide open look that you're getting.
The only thing I would add here too is where it says restaurant bar, that could be reimagined too as event space. That could be rentable. That could be really reimagined to fit whatever priorities or needs that the community wants. The other thing too is if you look at that central hub, that's essentially what that becomes is an observation deck. So as you're walking up and you're walking through that event space or that restaurant or bar, whatever that space is, you can also stand in and kind of look down, think about like capitals and the rotundas when you go out to the state capitol or you go out to the federal capitol building, and you're able to look out and look down into the atrium and kind of get a sense of the grandeur of the building and be able to look out and see outside and have these views that we showed you in the first part of that, so you can look out and really just take in the sense and the scale and scope of Catalina and its beauty.
Okay.
And Mike, on that note, just for the sense of scale for the commission, the width of that central hall, that kind of arrival point, is approximately, if you imagine the parking lot next to the Atwater, that space from about the edge of the Atwater to the library is approximately the width of that hall that's shown there. So you really imagine something that feels light, that feels airy, that feels like really a place that people can be moving through, and it's not crowded. It's kind of this graceful, air-filled space. And I just note on the restaurant and bar concept, this is a discussion we've had with the stakeholders, and I think it's worth more discussion about whether that's the perfect use, whether there's other things we could consider like an event space, but it could be a pretty extraordinary view. You're out there on the wharf and you're kind of elevated, and you could really imagine it being something that's quite incredible, and could also help to fund the ongoing maintenance of the facility. I think the last thing I'd mention, I'm not sure if it's in here, but all of this is feasible, right? So, if you design the plan, if you build from this kind of a framework, we can scale this vision to what's achievable in the near term and still have a long outlook. The existing facility is 50 years old, and I think there's no reason to believe that this new facility won't last just as long and shouldn't last just as long, if not longer. So I think the intent is to think long-term and think about the future and provide ourselves the ability to kind of adapt new plans into the future with the same facility.
Yeah, well said, Carl. And we do have a slide in there that'll kind of talk a little bit about the, we left your entire presentation alone. I didn't want to cut it up. So the next two slides we're going to go through relatively quickly because it kind of talks about the same.
Yes, it does.
The same idea. It's just talking a little bit about putting numbers to where we're at. So you have the central tower, you have the queuing arcades, which are indicated in the numerical to the public concourses and restrooms. And so this is just kind of identifying that from more of a floor plan design. This one is where the previous slide was the site plan. This is essentially the same thing, but it's on the main floor plan. So you can again see kind of where the central tower, the queuing arcades are, and some of the other things that we've already talked about. This slide here talks about the upper floor plan. So the previous one was the main floor. This one is the upper floor. Again, with the same. And then Carl, would you like to talk a little bit more about this? This is kind of your conceptual baby, if you will.
I'd love to. At the beginning of the presentation, there was some kind of imagery showing Catalina architecture and other kind of Spanish-style influenced architecture. Catalina has an interesting and somewhat unique architectural tradition, and I think it's important. I believe it's important that this new facility embrace and reflect that, but still with details that suit its time and place. So while we can on one hand look to those influences and those kind of Moorish and Spanish style influences like the casino, we can also think about as this structure rises that it gets lighter and airier, and that there's something almost maritime or nautical maybe about the expression of things like the cupola. So this view here would be from the kind of inside of the open arms when you're arriving, and we would see that kind of space that's in front of the building as perhaps a tiered space that steps down towards the water that could provide nice shaded, maybe even vegetated waiting areas, and this would be the kind of entry to that grand hall. So from that inside. So this is sort of the view that you would see if you were on the boat in the harbor and looking back at that center of the facility. So off to the right, you'd see clear story windows from kind of the concourse, and then off to the left there, you see what's indicated as the potential second story if we were to kind of pursue that kind of development. And then we included a couple images just to get a sense of the kind of scale and massing and pedestrian experience as well. And again, I just emphasize these are very early. This is kind of a loose sketch to give something of the sense of architectural character. But here you could imagine approaching from town. You've just had a wonderful weekend in Catalina, or you're going over to the mainland to visit friends, and you're walking down that promenade, and you really see how the new queuing concourse and shaded arcade on the left there extends from the building and provides that solid shade and protection from sun and rain. And really helps organize as well the lines. So whether it's your first time at the facility or your 100th time, you're going in the right place. There's kind of a beacon. There's this lantern that kind of draws you in, and the building really embraces you as you enter into that central waiting hall. Once there, you can, it's easy to see where to grab your ticket, where to use the facilities, how to grab a sandwich, and then the queuing line would start from that hall. So it really becomes a great collector point for pedestrians. And you see, no, next slide is good. You can see in both slides how we suggest the use of Catalina tile. I think that's also an important aspect to this. It's one of the great traditions on Catalina is our history, and so I think there's a number of ways that, whether it's on the wainscoting in the building or in the details around the entrances, that tile could be incorporated. This is from the other side of that hall. Now on the kind of vehicular drop-off. We'd almost be standing on kind of the top of the seaplane ramp there, looking here, and you could imagine how a really beautiful fountain or center kind of monument organizes the traffic flow as vehicles pull in to drop off and pick up people. That baggage claim that we mentioned earlier, that could really be a nice kind of interface. That there's a clear place on the right there to drop off your bags before you walk into the hall, or pick them up if you're leaving. And then off to the left, I think there's some room for maybe some angled parking or some additional parking there. We understand we need to organize cars, and that's an important thing, but this is really about interconnection and multimodal, so we didn't want to over provide that parking. But it really creates a nice organized drop off, and I personally think kind of a beautiful iconic moment. And then here's another view to get a sense of what it looks like when you're on the boat. You're just pulling in, you're about to have a really great weekend on the island, and this is kind of what you're greeted with. So something that feels grand and that kind of embraces the best of Catalina's history, I believe. And kind of on the upper left there, you can see it's shaded out a bit, but you could imagine how this facility grows over time. That maybe what we're building in the next year or two is the hall and the concourses, and maybe we can start to build out second stories and additional visitor facilities, and you can see how it starts to grow and expand, and there's the potential for that. And then I think we just had some comparison just to ensure that what we were drawing wasn't radically different than either what we have or what had been proposed. We did a little bit of homework just to kind of keep the sizes of things roughly aligned. So we feel like that a version of this is achievable within the budget that Bob and Mike have outlined.
Yeah, and a lot of that, depending on how how much we have in order to build out. A lot of that is kind of in flux. A lot of that can also change depending on how it gets phased. And essentially, this is a slide here that kind of shows how that could be phased out. And so you could build out, well, actually, Bob, do you want to talk a little more about that one?
Okay, in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see again we have a legend for that the coloring there, and so we got phase one, the salmon color there, and of course that's the central hub, and that's really the main works of getting the buildings back there that is comparable to what we have out there, and then additionally we should be able to get phase two, which is some of the shade structures, and get that done. We may not be able to get down all the way to floats 4 and 5 with phase, let's say 2A, but 2B, it's just a matter of getting enough additional funds but we would ready ourselves so that would be an easy construction project to come back and say, okay, within the next 2-3 years, let's get that finished up, okay? So you can see we incrementally just keep on building till we get this done. And then phase 3, as we're moving up, we get to that second level to get that incorporated. And if we're successful in acquiring more funds, we may be able to get that done, if that's what the community wants as we go through this design process. And then we got phase 4 is actually the floats out there. And that was really of interest to Catalina Express of how we're boarding and the steepness of the ramp. So when we met with the stakeholders there, Greg Bombard and his crew, he really had a focus that he wanted to get that, even though this is phase 4, he wanted to make sure that we're getting that addressed right now. As how we're entering the ramps, is that from the side or is that from the end, like floats 4 and 5? And then is it right now when you go over to Long Beach, the floats are 8 feet high. And so that's what takes a lot of that elevation difference down so that we don't have the steepness of the ramp. So we may end up having to replace all 3 of those, or just have 2 floats instead of 3, because incrementally over time we ended up with 3 floats, and we think we can have 2, and and then we buy 2 new floats, and then we could repurpose that 1, 2, and 3 for something else in the harbor. So that may end up finding its way in to get that done early, and realize those floats still were in the permitting because we'll have the floats built. It's not like we're working in the water. It's have the floats built and then have the ramps redone, and we're not actually working in the water. So it's still in our environmental document, it mentioned being able to do float work, okay? That's not doing new piers or pilings or revetment to be able to get that. But as long as we're just redoing the floats and ramps, then I think we're still within what we have approved so far. So that's what we have.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to mention is, Bob already mentioned it. We have quite a bit of funding we have already secured. We also have opportunities to secure some additional funds to see if we could realize some of that phasing out. There's also opportunity, especially within the second deck, to engage in a public-private partnership so that we can bring on a private partner who might want to build out a restaurant or partner up to see some of these developments realized, so we could kind of help to lay the framework and then bring on someone who would be willing to see the rest of those renovations in there as a part of that with an agreement on the operation side of things. So with that really concludes the presentation, and really what we wanted to know from the commissioners was, what are your initial thoughts, and are there some specific priorities that the commission has that we should really take into consideration as this continues to move through the design process? Because what we're trying to do is queue this up so that we can go out to the RFP, refine that design, bring on an actual designer, finish it, and then end up building it as we go along. And we want to make sure that the that the priorities of the commission, as well as the priorities that we've already heard from our community stakeholders, are incorporated into that. And what you see here is kind of an amalgamation of community stakeholder feedback, but I think we're at the point now where we want to continue to refine that from the commission side of things and see where you're at, whether it's, is there specific thoughts on the type of multimodal uses of the facility? Are there specific amenities that you would like to see there, functionality, those kind of things? So with that, I'll stop and turn that back over to the commission. And Carl is also available for questions too. He can lead some additional insight into the thought process behind the design.
This is great, Bob. My main priority is the traffic. I think you've done a really good job in like the Five Corners and Vaughn's, and so I have faith that this is going to be good, but I think that should be a focus, the flow in, the flow out. I do appreciate the cover for the weather and the elements, because that's really hard on people, is the sun and the wind and the rain. I also love that you think outside the box and you want to maximize the use of the land out there, and think of ways to generate revenue for the city, to help its future and maintain the building. And because I mean you're right in the middle of the element, the ocean, which is, as you know, tears up all pipes, property, it just gets hammered out there.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't last long out there.
No, it does not, and I think that it's really important that you're thinking outside the box too.
Yeah, have that revenue
for future
stream.
maintenance
Yeah.
and stuff that's going to be required after we get all the funds. We still need to maintain it.
Yeah, and select the right materials to build it from.
Right.
That it will still look great 20 years down the road. It'll be well maintained and looks great, just like the day we built it, if we do it right.
No, I think it looks great.
I think it's a great design. I really like it. I do have a concern about the floats if they are raised up to 8 feet, because like float 5 and some of the other floats are used by other than just the express. You have the parasail, you have the camps. Sometimes it's a dinghy dock. There's a lot of other uses that 8 feet would not be feasible and probably not safe.
That's a great point. I didn't think about
Yes,
that.
and I think that we probably could have the floats 4 and 5 be lower floats.
Okay.
And it was really we're getting, larger ships, larger ferries, and I think that's what really Greg's, how does he moor that,
I just want to be sure that the other
Yes.
floats are
Great comment, though.
Yeah, that is a great
And Greg is a great one to have on the team to be able to tell us, because that's his business, is how to safely moor it and have all those different users, all the way from just the boater that needs to be there, all the way up to the larger ship.
And a more minor concern, but you mentioned that first thing people want to do when they get off the boat is run to the restroom. So why is the restroom now moved as far away as possible?
Well, just so that it seems like you have a party of 10 and 2 people want to go, and now we've got 8 people waiting. In the functionality of the queuing in that central space, if we have good wayfinding, like Carl's saying, and get people there, they go, there's a restroom. I'm going to now get myself through that. Now I'm out of that central space, and now we're getting that functionality of that open space. And so if you need, we're stepping you out of that, and so we're trying to open it up more.
The access to, and Carl could probably speak to this as well, but the relocating the restrooms over there also provides a little easier access to those that are coming via car or walking from the city, rather than traversing all the way across that little area to where the bathrooms are now. a shorter distance, and you could access it easily from the outside of the facility as you're coming in. You know, think of like Disneyland. When you go in, you have the bathrooms immediately right outside the gate, because people are coming in, they're using the restroom, and then they're continuing on their journey as they transition through the gateway or as they transition into other areas. And it seems like that was kind of the concept for maybe rethinking about how those restrooms are utilized by not just those that are entering into the queue lines for the fare return for the cross-channel carriers, but also those that are visiting the businesses that are located there, or those people that are just dropping off real quick and maybe need to run to the restroom, or they're waiting for their loved ones and not keeping them in the areas and kind of in the way.
I think all that's correct. I would also look at, you know, where they're located in relation to the different floats and how you're getting on the floats and knowing where people are coming from. It seemed to make sense since, you know, primarily it's pedestrian circulation coming to and from town, that it's kind of a point where everyone's going to walk past, so it makes sense there. And the only other point I'd add, you know, I'm really open to thoughts, and I love hearing this feedback. But the only other point I'd add is that if on the we were calling the back of the building, kind of the lower portion of the building adjacent to the wharf, if that's visitor services, if that's, you know, the new Eli's Deli, for instance, or kind of other things, you might look at some programming that has the possibility to be double-sided, or you know, have some kind of transparency to it at those orange circles there. So having not restroom usage, but something that could kind of pass through might be nice to add some kind of transparency to the building. But again, I think this is a good conversation to be having, and I wouldn't represent that this is a finished plan by any means.
I guess just to add support to the idea that maybe switch the phases to 1, 2, 3, or excuse me, 1, 2, 4, and then 3. And then it sounds like what the Express is concerned with is
Switch phases to 1, 2, 4, and then 3?
3, yeah, because it sounds like that's what you were leading towards, but I totally think that's a good idea. I mean, the restaurant may or may not ever happen, or that.
Well, that's great feedback.
But facilitating actual getting people off the boat safely and easily without such a big walk would be. Yeah. It is kind of odd where you walk down and then walk back up. Otherwise, it looks amazing. I mean, it's not a little improvement.
And I definitely like the fact that you're going to keep it architecturally like Spanish style type instead of a modern building.
100% of this project and design,
exactly.
The kudos has to go to Carl and his team, Hart Hewerton. They've done a fantastic job kind of taking a lot of the feedback from city and community stakeholders and kind of looking at what would really. When I first saw this design, my initial thought was, haven't I seen this before already? It felt like it already existed in our community.
It fits.
And I think that was kind of the overall goal that the team was going for. And it's really great to hear that kind of feedback, especially from the Planning Commission, because we were really hoping that we were moving forward in the right direction, and I love the feedback that you guys have given us, because I think we really need to look at, okay, what about the restrooms? Maybe there's tweaks that we can do there, changing the phases, making sure that we're looking at the float heights and whatnot.
Yeah, and I guess it may be obvious, but what I really like about it is it looks like a gateway. It doesn't look like something else.
The
There's
cinder
no
blocks we
confusion.
have right now are not attractive coming or going.
No.
And it does look like a place you're going to enter, but then transition through and get out of. It's not really a place to hang out in. It's a place to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly. I mean, there will be hanging out because you're forced to.
Yeah, but functional
it'll
if
be
you
a
have
pleasure
to.
while you're waiting there.
Yeah, and especially if we repurpose some of the wharf, there is some space that you could hang out for maybe a little more extended time. Or as you're recreating, toward Lover's Cove area, getting, so it gets you at least toward that area, so not make it look so industrial out there. Right now, it's very industrial.
Yeah.
So what can we do different? And you can see that definitely the vegetation is part of this to make it so that it works, but it's also the right selection of the vegetation because, again, we're out there in the middle of the ocean.
Looks great.
So we will take this feedback. Kind of the next steps for us is to continue to refine this, put a little bit more lines and flesh out the design and get it to a place that we can then go to the RFP. We've already finished the CEQA categorical or the mitigated neg deck that was approved by this body last month. We're currently finalizing the federal side with the NEPA and the categorical exclusions, and we're working really closely with Metro, who is one of our major pass-through funding sources. So once that gets done, we're anticipating having this RFP go out by August, September. And then hopefully we'll have a consultant on board before the end of the year, and then we'll be moving forward with, again, finalizing design and then going to construction. So things are about to get moving really fast, and we will continue to bring this back to the Planning Commission, provide status updates, and where there's touch points or design influence, we'll make sure that the Commission has a continued say on that. So if you have any other questions or comments.
Just seems like a good idea that you're getting it moving fast. So
Right.
that when they start construction, it's not July and August, it's, January or December.
We do not want to be starting construction in the middle of the season, absolutely not. And things will look a little different, and there's a lot of moving pieces for that. I know we'll be talking about how to mitigate the disruption as much as possible, because this is not something that's going to be able to be constructed in a matter of months. It's going
to take a while to get.
It's going to take a while, but I think when it's done, we're going to have a really incredible project that our community will feel proud of and that visitors will just be in awe of.
Yeah, and as we're moving to construction, we're going to have temporary structures out there and facilities so that, we can house everything that we need to do out there so that the visitor services and the essential needs, bathrooms are still out there. So it'll just be different for a little while, but we'll have the big sign showing what it'll look like. So if you hang on for a while, you're going to end up with an awesome site. Okay?
Well, thank you, Bob,
very
for all
much.
your
Thanks.
work.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Have a good night.
Okay. Anything else from the planning director?
I got nothing else.
Any city attorney reports?
None for me. And an informative presentation. And I just wanted to confirm, I know this was a discussion item, Mike. I just wanted to confirm we did not receive any public comment, any other public comment, including relating to the discussion item.
I did not know.
Okay, great.
Okay, commissioner's business?
I'd like to wish our audiovisual man a happy birthday, and thank you for working on your day off.
Happy
Or your
birthday, Matt.
Happy birthday.
Congratulations to the
Yep.
class of
So-
2021. I think
Yes,
that's
I was
today.
just-
congratulations to
And we
finally
would
being
all
able
be
to
there
graduate and
if
not
we
drive
could.
by in golf carts. Congratulations.
Okay, business from the audience? Seeing none, we'll adjourn.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.